Barrister Ntiense was a name known across the nation. As one of the most successful lawyers in the country, she had never lost a case. Her colleagues admired her clients trusted her, and the courtroom was her stage. Yet, despite her high-profile career, it was her personal life that most intrigued those around her. Ntiense was married to Iboro, a man whose charm and wealth seemed to match her own brilliance. Iboro was not just a businessman. He was the kind of man who made those around him feel special. He showered Ntiense with love, lavishing her with gifts and providing a life of luxury that many could only dream of. Their home was a beautiful and vibrant compound, complete with bright-colored gardens and a pool. Every morning, Iboro would prepare breakfast for Ntiense, making sure she had everything she needed to start her day. He took care of her in every way, even supporting her emotionally during her grueling court trials. Though he was a very wealthy man, he still helped Ntiense with the cooking and cleaning whenever he had the chance to. He was a very romantic man and was proud to show it. Iboro's love for Ntiense was evident in everything he did. But not everyone in Ntiense's life was as happy with this perfect picture. Ntiense's younger sister, Mfreke, lived with them and harbored a deep-seated jealousy. Mfreke was young, beautiful, and ambitious. She admired her sister's husband and wished she had a man like that. "You are so lucky to have a man like Uncle Iboro," she often told Ntiense. Mfreke's envy took a dark turn as she began to seek Iboro's attention for herself. She tried various tactics to seduce him, dressing half naked and flirting whenever her sister was not home. But Iboro remained steadfast. His loyalty to Ntiense was unwavering, and he consistently rejected Mfreke's advances with grace and firmness. Despite Mfreke's multiple attempts, Iboro was not moved. He was a man of integrity, and he loved his wife deeply. He refused to compromise his commitment to his wife. As the weeks passed, the tension between the sisters grew. Though Ntiense was unaware of Mfreke's schemes, Mfreke desired to have her brother-in-law. She would even have dreams of getting married to him. She was so desperate and would stop at nothing to have him. Mfreke's friends at school knew so much about her brother-in-law because that's all she talked about. She compared every man that asked her out and rejected them because they were not like her brother-in-law. After multiple rejections, her friends became worried about her. Mfreke admired Iboro from afar, noting the way he looked at Ntiense with so much love and tenderness. He watched how Iboro was so generous to Ntiense. He would massage her feet when she came back from court. He cared for her with everything he had. And he was very faithful to his wife. This fueled Mfreke's desire to take her sister's husband. But her attempts to win him over were met with unyielding resistance. One evening, while Iboro was working in his room, Mfreke saw her chance. She sent the housekeeper on an errand, wore a very revealing dress, and went to Iboro's room. She knocked on the door before entering. "Uncle Iboro," she said, "I wanted to bring you a cup of tea. You have been working so hard." Iboro looked up from his papers, his expression friendly but distant. "Thank you, Mfreke, but I'm really focused on this project right now." Mfreke placed the tea on his desk and lingered a moment. Leaning closer than necessary, "You must be so tired. Maybe you need a break. I could help you with anything." She moved closer to him to massage his neck. Iboro shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "No, Mfreke, I'm fine, really." Her smile faded, replaced by a frustrated frown. She had hoped for a different reaction, but Iboro's loyalty to his wife was unshakable. She left the room in anger, her heart heavy with disappointment. The next day, Mfreke tried a different approach. She paid attention to when Iboro was getting ready for work, and she barged into the room while he was dressing up. "Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know you were not dressed," she said. Iboro immediately covered himself. "Please leave my room. And don't ever come in here without knocking," he responded very firmly. The more Iboro rejected her, the more Mfreke's bitterness grew. She began to make excuses to be around him, hoping that persistence might wear down his defenses. But Iboro's behavior remained steadfast. Her demeanor began to change because she was so frustrated. Sad and withdrawn, always staring into the space. Her friends were asking, "What is going on with you? You have been so distant lately." "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just thinking about some things," she responded. One night, as the family gathered for dinner, Mfreke's frustration reached the peak. As she watched Iboro and Tiense laughing, her envy twisted into something darker, a sense of betrayal that could no longer be contained. Over the next few weeks, Mfreke's resentment kept growing, and she became very distant from her sister. Her behavior was more erratic, and the tension between the sisters was evident. "What is going on with you? You have been so withdrawn and easily offended," Ntiense asked her sister. "I'm fine. Leave me alone," Mfreke responded. Ntiense, not knowing the true cause of the problem, tried to bridge the gap. But Mfreke's hostility became even more intense. Her envy turned into a destructive plan. She began plotting ways to destroy Iboro's reputation, hoping to drive a wedge between him and Ntiense. Her jealousy had transformed into a dangerous obsession. She was willing to stop at nothing until she took her sister's husband. Meanwhile, Ntiense remained focused on her work and her marriage, trusting that her life with Iboro was as perfect as it seemed. She could not see the dark cloud looming over her family. Mrs. Ndanti, Ntiense and Mfreke's mother, was a woman of discipline, and her influence over her daughters was significant. She had great control over her daughters, and they did everything she told them. All three women had a special bond due to their upbringing. Their father died when they were very young, and their mother suffered a great deal of pain to raise them all by herself. So they love her and do everything she says as a way of payback for all she did for them. She had great control over the girls. Mrs. Ndanti was feared among her peers and other family members because she used Ntiense's legal skills and prowess to threaten anyone that dared her. The peace of Ntiense and Iboro's home was shattered one fateful evening. As Ntiense and her mother, Mrs. Ndanti, came back from the market, they opened the door and saw Mfreke screaming and crying, running towards the door with torn clothes. Her voice trembled as she told the story of how Iboro assaulted her. "He took advantage of me while you were at the market. He tore my clothes while I was fighting back." Ntiense's heart skipped, and the grocery bags she was holding dropped to the ground. The world seemed to blur around her as she tried to process what Mfreke was saying. Her immediate reaction was one of disbelief. "Mfreke, that's impossible. Iboro would never." Mrs. Ndanti interjected. Her face was pale but resolute. "Ntiense, this is serious. We need to listen to Mfreke. This cannot be ignored," her mother said. "Uncle Iboro has been making advances at me and trying to seduce me, and I have been ignoring him," Mfreke cried. "What? Why didn't you tell someone?" her mother asked. "I thought he would stop. I did not want to destroy sister's marriage," Mfreke responded as tears flooded her face. Iboro, hearing the commotion in the living room, rushed out of his bedroom wearing only his trousers. "What happened? Why is Mfreke crying?" Iboro said. "Shut up, you monster!" Mrs. Ndanti yelled. Iboro froze as he tried to make sense of what was happening. The words cut through Ntiense like a knife. Her trust in her husband has always been solid, but now doubt began to creep in. Mfreke's performance was convincing, and the pressure from her mother was overwhelming. Ntiense struggled with the conflict between her love for her husband and her sense of duty to her sister. Iboro, upon hearing the accusation, was devastated. Ntiense, you have to believe me, he pleaded. I would never hurt Mfreke. She's my sister. This is a setup. You know me better than this. Your sister has been trying to seduce me for months now, and I kept ignoring her, Iboro explained. Are you listening to yourself? My little sister seducing you. She goes to school and comes back home and stays home all day. She doesn't even have a boyfriend. How can she be seducing you? You are the one who tried numerous times to sleep with her. Ntiense replied very angrily. What? Iboro responded, with disappointment in his voice. Ntiense turned to Mfreke and looked at her. Her face was soaked up with tears. She wept bitterly. Ntiense and Mrs. Ndanti moved closer to Mfreke to comfort her. I'm sorry, Mfreke, I will take care of this, please, Ntiense said. This man is an animal and must not be allowed to go scot-free, their mother responded. We must teach him a lesson the way we teach other people that dare us. Mrs. Ndanti ran to Iboro, yelling in his face and hitting him all over his body. Iboro, confused. I don't understand what is happening here. I was in a meeting. He tried to explain his side of the story, but no one was listening. Ntiense was so torn. She wanted to believe her husband, but the weight of her mother's insistence and Freke's tears created a world of doubt. As the days went by, the situation escalated. Mrs. Ndanti called some of the family members and informed them. The family descended on Iboro and Ntiense, turning their lives upside down. Ntiense tried to defend Iboro. I have lived with him for over 10 years. I have never seen him do anything questionable. Is it written on people's forehead that they are monsters? One family member asked. Are you taking your husband's side over your sister's? Another family member asked. Were you there when he did this abominable thing? Another family member asked. They all attacked Ntiense, and she was quiet. Ntiense, you have to charge Iboro to court for this, like we do to other people. He thinks he can do this because we don't have a brother. The family came to a unanimous agreement to charge Iboro to court. Ntiense felt very conflicted. She wanted to settle it within the family, but her mother pressured and guilted her. The news was everywhere, with headlines screaming about the scandal. Ntiense's career and reputation were on the line as she faced the impossible choice of prosecuting her own husband. Ntiense walked into the room and saw Iboro completely broken over the issue. I swear to you, I did not do this. Your sister, before Iboro could complete his sentence, you are a monster. I cannot even look at you right now. My family has decided to prosecute you, to teach you a lesson and the likes of you. So get a lawyer for yourself. I will be defending my sister. I'll see you in court. Mfreke walked out. Iboro's life, which was already upside down, totally crashed. He could not believe how things went from bad to worse within just a few days. The courtroom became a battleground. Mfreke took the stand first. Her appearance and demeanor was very emotional. Her testimony was compelling as she recounted the event of that fateful evening with a rawness that seemed so genuine to be false. She painted a vivid picture of Iboro as an aggressive predator. As Mfreke spoke, Ntiense's heart conflicted more. She wanted to believe her husband could never hurt a fly, but Mfreke's testimony seemed very genuine. Ntiense forced herself to remain focused on her duty to her sister. Iboro's defense attorney, Barrister Uko was a seasoned veteran known for his skill in handling high-profile cases. He destroyed Mfreke's testimony, pointing out inconsistencies and questioning the reliability of her account. His cross-examination was thorough, but the damage had already been done. The emotional impact of Mfreke's testimony stayed in the minds of the judge and the public. Outside the courtroom, the pressure was relentless. Mrs. Ndanti, Ntiense's mother, was a constant pressure on Ntiense. She kept pushing her to do everything she could to support her sister and punish the man that hurt her sister. The trial had turned her life into a stage for a drama she never wished to play. Iboro's day in court was equally grueling. The constant scrutiny and mounting evidence against him weighed heavily on him. He fought to maintain his composure. His attempts to reach out to his wife, Ntiense, were met with resistance. He begged her to believe in his innocence, but the pleas fell on deaf ears. Ntiense, as the lead prosecutor, faced her husband across the courtroom. The emotional toll was devastating. Iboro's defense team fought tirelessly to prove his innocence, but the case was complicated by Mfreke's emotional testimony and the media's attention. Iboro, who had brought in so much money for the company, was immediately suspended from his director position. The board did not want the stigma and the case to interfere with the company's success. He spent a lot of money in legal fees to clear his name and prove his innocence in court. Despite the emotional turmoil, Ntiense remained focused on the case, driven by the pressure from her family and the desire to seek justice. She was worried for Iboro because she had never lost a case, and this was not going to be her first. Her competitive nature came in full display as she pulled all strings to secure a win. The courtroom was both a stage and a battlefield, and Ntiense struggled to balance her roles as a prosecutor, a wife, and a sister was more intense than ever. The once harmonious family was now a fractured entity, torn apart by the scandal. Ntiense and her mother stayed by Mfreke's side, giving her all the support and love she needed to pull through this difficult time. Iboro, on the other hand, was completely isolated. Ntiense had asked him to move out before the first day of the court, so he was staying with his best friend, Barrister Enwongo. He felt abandoned and alone. His few friends that believed his innocence rallied around him to offer support, but he was in shock at the actions of his wife. "I would never think my wife would abandon me like this," he said to his friend Enwongo. Iboro fell ill from the stress of the battle. He had lost his company, his house, and a lot of money. "It's okay, brother. As long as the court says you're innocent, you will recover everything. Don't worry," Barrister Enwongo comforted him. The end of the trial approached. Ntiense's heart pounded as she braced herself for the outcome. The judge entered the court. "I find the defendant, Mr. Iboro, guilty of the charges of sexual assault." The words hit Iboro like a physical blow. A sense of profound disbelief and devastation washed over him. Iboro's face fell, and he looked at Ntiense with a mixture of pain and disappointment. The once hopeful future they had envisioned, now shattered. The court officers took Iboro away. He looked defeated. Ntiense watched as he left the courtroom, her heart aching with the weight of the decision she had been forced to make. The man she loved was now facing the consequences of a conviction that she had helped to bring about. It was a very sad day for Iboro. He was baffled. How did I go from a very wealthy man with the best wife and the most peaceful home to a convicted felon? He wept. Mrs. Ndanti was so happy. Finally, that monster is gone, she said. She turned to Ntiense, who was filled with sadness. Don't be sad, my daughter. You did the right thing. He's an abuser and deserves to be in prison. You have always wanted to put all the bad people in prison, and now you're doing a great job. Thank you for standing up by your sister and protecting her, she said to Ntiense. Ntiense had no words. She was speechless. Iboro had a hard time in prison, while Ntiense's career also faced a nightmare. Colleagues and peers whispered behind closed doors. Ntiense found herself isolated, both in her professional and personal life. Her friends and acquaintances who were once close were now distant. If she could do this to her husband, what is she capable of doing to other people? People gossiped. People were scared of her. The prison environment was harsh, and the emotional toll of losing his wife, his home and his company was profound for Iboro. His wife Ntiense tried multiple times to visit him in prison, but he turned down her attempt. He did not trust her and refused to see her. 3 years had passed since Iboro's conviction. His defense team, including his best friend Barrister Enwongo, they had been diligently working on the case, uncovering new evidence that cast doubt on the validity of Mfreke's accusation. The revelation of the new evidence led to a motion for parole and the review of the conviction. Ntiense was contacted by Iboro's lawyer, who informed her of the new development. We have new information and we're going back to court, so get ready, Barrister Enwongo informed her. The news was both shocking and overwhelming. Ntiense had spent years battling with the consequences of her decision, and now the possibility of Iboro's release opened old wounds for her. Iboro's lawyers pointed out all the inconsistencies and contradictions in Mfreke's testimonies. The time frame and physical evidence were not accurate. The police report and medical exam report were also false. Digital evidence showed all her deceitful intentions. As at the time Mfreke claimed to have been assaulted by Iboro, Iboro had been on a 3-hour video Zoom call with multiple business partners. He had been on the call before Ntiense left for the market and only left the call when he heard the screamings in the living room. He had also been posting updates on the company's social media platform at the time of Mfreke's claims. So the digital footprint showed that Iboro was on both a Zoom call and on social media. There is no way he could have assaulted Mfreke at the same time. The business partners came forward as witnesses, and the evidence and call logs showed evidence of him being active for 3 hours. The revelation dismantled the case and exposed the true extent of the lies Mfreke had orchestrated. Ntiense couldn't believe that her sister could have done this to her. The judge ordered for Mfreke to appear in court. On hearing this and seeing the evidence, Mfreke confessed to her mother. Mrs. Ndanti was in absolute shock, but decided to cover Mfreke. She called Ntiense to the house. Please forgive your sister, she made a mistake, her mother begged. Mfreke begged and apologized to her sister. Please, I don't know what came over me. I did not think he would go this far. Uncle Iboro is a very good man. Please forgive me. Ntiense was shocked beyond words. She broke down in tears. Mom, you and Mfreke destroyed my life, my marriage, and my career. I told you to give me chance to investigate properly, but you called the family members and pressured me into taking action. We sent an innocent man, my husband, to prison for a crime he did not commit. Iboro was acquitted of all charges. He stayed with his best friend Enwongo and worked on rebuilding his business. His business partners helped him to start a new company and gave him a lot of support, which helped him to grow faster. Ntiense tried numerous times to meet with Iboro and apologize, but Iboro turned the meeting down. He sent a message to her that he forgave her a long time ago, but he could never trust her again. Mfreke, on the other hand, was charged for perjury and sentenced to 3 years in prison and a fine. Ntiense, you're the best lawyer in the country. Please don't let your sister go to prison, Mrs. Ndanti cried. Mother, do you remember when you said all criminals should go to prison? Mfreke perjured herself. She committed a crime. You sent my husband to prison because he wasn't your son, and now you want to protect your daughter. I told you to allow me to handle this thing within the family, but you didn't listen. Ntiense scolded her mother. Mrs. Ndanti made efforts to reconcile with her daughter, Ntiense. She reached out, seeking forgiveness and attempting to repair their strained relationship. Mrs. Ndanti acknowledged her role in the situation and expressed a desire to support Ntiense in moving forward, despite the irreparable damage she had caused. Ntiense forgave her family, but she deliberately decided to cut off contact with Mfreke for a period. She distanced herself from her family and focused on emotional recovery. Iboro separated himself from both Ntiense and her family. He was too traumatized from how his wife handled the issue. He focused on rebuilding his life and his businesses. Ntiense spent years trying to reconcile with Iboro. What moral lesson did you learn from this story? And if you were in Iboro's shoes, what would you do with Ntiense? If you like this story, please like and share with your friends and family. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. I greatly appreciate your support. See you in the next story. Bye.